You're listening to Season 3 of the Inspired Entrepreneur's Guide podcast. This is episode 22. Welcome back, everybody, to the Inspired Entrepreneur's Guide, the podcast that encourages you to stop dreaming and start doing. Today, we are covering a topic that I'm deeply passionate about: customer service and experience. In this episode, you will learn the importance of defining your ideal client and how it may affect your overall customer experience. More importantly, increasing your odds of getting good quality referrals, and really just so much more. To help me with this topic is my guest, Yanique Grant. She is a professional speaker with a bachelor's degree in hospitality and tourism management, has a certificate in international customer service. She's the host of the podcast, Navigating the Customer Experience, and offers professional coaching and workshops on customer service and leadership so that businesses and their teams can develop the skills they need in order to succeed. Yanique, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Darlene. I'm really happy to be here with you.
Awesome. So I mentioned that you have a background in hospitality management and tourism management. So I want to just jump right into these questions and ask, how did that background help you form your current practices and policies around the customer experience?
Well, as you can imagine, hospitality and customer service go hand in hand. Even if you think back to just how you operate at home, if you have a guest that comes over, as the owner of the home, you'd offer your guest a seat, you'd offer them a glass of water or something to eat, So, from the very basic, that's where hospitality starts from, just in how you treat people and how you accommodate them. So I've always been big on wanting to communicate with people and help people. And so I think my background really dovetailed nicely into customer experience. So by the third year of my degree, I knew that I wanted to work with people. I knew that customer service was something that I was passionate about, and I really hated getting bad customer service. So I said, clearly the need exists where I can go into a business place and help them to improve their experiences, but it won't only help me, it will also help other people. And if we have better experiences, our life would be just better overall.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to talk about and say customer experience a lot. And so for those listening, what is your definition of customer experience? So when we're talking about that today, what does that mean to you?
So I have this really cute little card that I give out to my participants in workshops. And I hate workshops that are just focused on the theory, and people learn a lot from visuals. So I found a very cool way to graphically explain to someone just by looking at the card what customer experience is. So basically it is satisfying and exceeding, or better yet, I should say, it's the sum total. So I use the actual image that represents sum total. For those of you that are listening, if you use Microsoft Excel, it's that E.
Right.
So it's a sum total of satisfying and exceeding the two needs that the customer has, which is their emotional needs and their intellectual needs. And then adding value to those two needs. And by doing that, you'll have happy customers. If they're happy and they're pleased with what you gave them, they'll go and they'll tell their friends and they'll tell their family and their coworkers. And by doing that, it will have an influence on other people wanting to come and do business with you. And so by default, you will make more money, because that's why people go in business, right? To make money.
Right. Exactly. So you said two things that are very interesting to me, and it's to fulfill their emotional and intellectual needs, followed by their value. But I want to focus on the emotional and then the intellectual, because the value is somewhat easy for a business person to determine, like, okay, well, my services and my skill set is the value most likely, but the emotional and intellectual might be harder for them to understand what they need to be doing. So can you talk a little bit on the emotional aspect and then a little bit on the intellectual? So what does that look like?
Sure. So as human beings, regardless of where you are from throughout the world, we all leave an experience with a feeling, right? Whether it's good or bad, the point is we do have a feeling. So let's say you have a cable service and the Olympics is going on right now. So, let's say your cable service is constantly breaking down and you're calling the cable company and saying, listen, I can't get to see the actual races that I want to see or the sporting events. And this is just, dampening my experience. And I really love this particular sport. And they say, okay, we're going to send someone over, 3 days past, 4 days past. So at the end of the day, the customer feels very neglected. They feel like they're not getting what they've paid for. And then the company sometimes is not even giving them back a rebate. Sometimes the money, though, doesn't even satisfy the negative experience, because you can give the person back the money, but it's not going to replace the experience that they've lost. So it's very important to clearly identify how you want your customers to feel when they interact with your business. And the only way you can define that is to, I think, sometimes put yourself into the customer's shoes. Sometimes, you need to do like what they do on Undercover Boss. You have to just, be a customer in your own business, see what the process is like. When you call, do you actually get someone that picks up in the first 2 minutes? When the person picks up, can they answer your question? I mean, if those things are not happening, then it means that your customer is clearly not having a great experience.
Right.
So the emotions is really, really critical, because when people rate you, that NPS, Net Promoter Score, when they ask, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this company to a family or a friend? I personally am not going to recommend a company if it is that I wouldn't want to do business with them again, because I'm not going to want anybody else to have an experience that I had that was bad. So it's important for companies to recognize that the feelings really, really matter. And I know it's very intangible in terms of it's hard to measure, but if you hire the right people, you create the right circumstances, and you don't get defensive when things go wrong, because that's another thing. Things will happen that are not, predictable. They're unpredictable. But how do your team members respond to those unpredictable moments?
Right.
To recover that customer experience. If you get all of that into some sequence or process, you will definitely be standing out from your competition.
Yeah. And speak about the intellectual too. So you have the emotional aspect, which, I feel is, super important. And as someone that's a service provider, it feels good too when you could tell that you've had that good emotional impact on your clients and their business. But what would be an intellectual example in terms of?
Basically, if we use the same example, the intellectual would be that customers are only contacting you either through social media, through the telephone, through your website, face to face, for only two reasons. They're either contacting you because they would like to make a complaint, so they're an existing customer, they have a problem, or maybe it's not a problem, maybe it's a complaint in terms of they're not understanding how to use the product or the service that they've purchased from you. Or they're calling to make a request. So, your marketing strategies have clearly worked. They're thinking about engaging you for business, and now they're calling to get further information or visiting you to get further information to finalize on their purchasing decision. They're not calling to say, hey, I went to the beach last week and I just wanted to let you know that, the waters are really blue and the sand is great. They're calling, contacting you to make a complaint or a request. So that's where the intellectual comes into play. So they're feeling the need of what they need intellectually on a level of either being a complaint or a request. And then how you deliver on those needs that they're contacting you about will determine how they feel, which will impact the emotional. So it's all connected.
Right. That's amazing. You mentioned hiring the right people. So, so they can put forth those practices and make sure that your clients are having an emotional experience that you want them to have. And so I kind of want to flip it a little bit for a lot of people that listen to this are solopreneurs. So most of them are service providers. So instead of hiring the right people, how important is it to hone in on the clients that you want to work with, your ideal client, in order to maintain that retention. So does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay.
So, funny enough, it's something that I personally struggle with on my own as well as a business owner, especially moving into the online market. It's very, trying to define who your ideal client is on an online space versus when you were serving people more on a brick and mortar kind of, experience. But basically, I think you need to focus on what the greatest pain is that you're trying to recover or fill. And then from there, you work your way back ways. So it's like you're starting from the bottom, and then going in the opposite direction, if you understand what I'm saying. Trying to really identify what need you're going to be filling for these people. What's their pain point?
Right.
And if you have a solution for those pain points, then it's much easier for you to identify who your ideal client would be.
Right. Right. And that's so set into that whole emotion again, because their pain point speaks to those emotions.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So talking more about these solopreneurs and those that are listening to this, episode, or that will be listening to this episode, what are some things that they should know in order to lay that foundation for their unique customer experience and service? So what are some things that they should just get right, for a for a lack of better words, get right from the beginning?
So do it right the first time, every time.
Yeah.
Well, as I said before, they need to be clear on who they're serving and what need they're fulfilling and what the pain point is. But outside of that, you need, as a business owner, if you're a solopreneur, as you indicated, you really need to hone in on your own abilities in terms of being flexible, being supportive, offering clear communication, being accessible. Because if you're a solopreneur, then everything is dependent on you. And so there's no employee to, train or whatever. So all of the training and the investment and the development needs to go into your own abilities and competence. And so people will work with you if you're flexible, you're accessible, you are clear in your communication, you deliver results, so you understand what they're saying to you, you understand the language they're speaking in, and you're able to communicate that with them in a way that they understand, that they can execute practical strategies that they'll see results from. So a lot focuses on what you're doing to invest in yourself. So you can't just go online, for example, and say you're going to make money. You have to really invest in yourself and identify what are the qualities that you need to improve upon so you can add value to someone else.
Right.
Because they themselves, your clients themselves, are looking for solutions. They're feeling a pain. They need to, for example, master how to use Photoshop, or they need to master how to sell better. So if your area of expertise is to teach them how to use Photoshop, how can you really hone into the fact that this person is not a techie person? They're not very familiar with using this tool. How can I break it down in the simplest terms that they feel like they can manage this on their own when I'm finished with them?
Right. Yeah. So it's definitely looking at everything again. And I feel like we're repeating, but I think it's important is to look at it from the customer's point of view. So in terms of planning and laying that foundation, it's always good to get inside of what that customer, like you said, if they're not techie, what can I do to help this person be good at what they're coming to me for help with?
Exactly. And recognize also that we're not all on the same level. And so let's say you're in the business of IT, your background is in IT, and you're talking to someone whose their background is not in IT.
Right.
When you're speaking to them, you have to be careful of the language that you're using and the jargon that you use, because every industry has their own jargons. So you can't be speaking to them like you're speaking to your IT colleague who knows what, let's just make up a term, for example, MYOT is, and you're thinking the client knows that because, that's just a standard global thing. Everybody knows what MYOT is, for example.
Right.
You can't take that for granted. You need to really lay it down in the simplest possible terms, and I guess that's why it irks me when, because people use so much instant messaging nowadays, there are lots of these acronyms, for example, like LOL and, you know, a bunch of others. And we've shortened the English language. And if you're not familiar with those shortened versions,
right,
you can easily slip into sending a message or a formal email to a client and have something in there that's jargoned and the person doesn't know what you're speaking about. So it's so important that you're clear on all levels. It's not just about how you talk, but it's also what you write in your written language, that people are clear, they know what you're talking about, and they understand whatever it is that you're saying.
Absolutely. There's two examples that come to mind. One is you and I are both podcasters, so we know what show notes means for the most part. But if you're speaking to someone that's brand new and they're just starting a podcast and they say, well, what do I need to do for my show? And you mentioned show notes, and they're kind of like, well,
what's that?
What does that mean? Yeah. So that's one example. And just for the sake of clarity here, it's, you know, basically an overview of what your podcast episode is about. It could have timestamps. It could be very, very detailed, or it can be a short synopsis, and it's just a blog post on your website. But just saying show notes, you know, if someone that's new is not going to understand that.
Exactly. That's a very perfect example. So you really need to break things down. And what may seem as ABC to you, like who doesn't know that, is not ABC to another person. So you have to think with them in mind when you're communicating.
Absolutely. So what happens, this is actually a perfect lead into my next question. Let's say there is a breakdown in communication or a misunderstanding, or maybe as a service provider, you made a mistake. How do you fix that or address that with your client in order to continue to be a good service provider and offer good service to them?
Wow. So basically, service recovery. You know, it's funny that you brought that question up, because I was just having a conversation with a colleague of mine about an experience I had over the weekend with someone that I recommended to a client of mine to help her build her website. And the interaction didn't go as I had hoped, because, you know, I had a good experience when I hired him, and that's why I recommended him to someone that I knew. However, she did not have the same experience, and he wanted to, of course, relinquish all ties with her and just have her walk away and find someone else, because he just didn't feel that he was able to deliver what she wanted. Now, I guess from a business point of view, there are times when this person may not be the ideal client for you, and yes, you may have to walk away. But I do believe that those are anomalies and they don't happen very often.
Right.
However, in this case, I do believe that it was salvageable. And so one of the conversations I had with him was, you have to look at the big picture. So you leave her and you walk away and you say to her she needs to find someone else. She's had such an uncomfortable experience with you because she potentially represents you could be getting more business, because if you had completed the job, she would have been able to maybe share with other people. So let's say you charge her $1,000, and because of her connectivities in social media, she's able to get you an additional 10 clients. Now, you basically throw $10,000 away because you have opted to say, I don't think that this person is the ideal customer, and we can't serve her, and let her walk away. So from a big picture point of view, I was trying to show him that I think sometimes we need to be a little bit more flexible as business owners in our strategy with our customers. And sometimes you may need to, for lack of a better word, saying that, throw the money away, like, forego whatever additional costs you would have charged the customer for the opportunity of goodwill at the end of it. Because again, because of the emotions, people are driven by emotions. They make their decisions based on emotions. I'm not saying that other things don't come into play in the decision-making process, but your emotions play an integral part. And she was just so emotionally hurt. Like, just listening to the words that she used with me from the experience, I do believe if he had tried to rectify the situation and not been so inflexible, that the result would have been completely different. So for a solopreneur, if something goes wrong with a customer, the first thing is you need to act quickly. You need to act with speed. Don't let the situation linger for 2-3 days before you actually get back to the customer and get in touch with them. You need to act quickly, respond immediately. The next thing is you need to take responsibility. So try not to get into blaming, oh, it's because of the software, or oh, it's because of this. Just own the problem, right? And work towards a solution. The third thing is, well, clearly if they're a solopreneur, they're empowered because they're the decision maker. So, I mean, that may not necessarily apply to them, but feel empowered to the point where you feel like you can give the customer a solution. And you must in your business identify what is something of value that you can give back to the customer, that to you it costs little or nothing, but to the customer it's considered to be the world.
Right.
So those would be my 4 tips for service recovery, for a very small business, for a solopreneur, and even for a large entity. And, you know, when you look at the customer lifetime value,
right,
losing customers should be something that you are working assiduously to ensure that you don't encounter, because that customer multiplied by whatever they're going to spend with you over the course of 10 years can definitely affect your bottom line in the long term if you don't focus on keeping them, because it's much easier to keep somebody who's doing business with you than to try and attract a new one who's never done any business with you.
Right, right. And those people that you continue to do business with are likely, as long as you're speaking to their needs and providing good service, is to refer you. So, you know, and not even that, you want people, there was a quote, and I had it originally in my questions, but you said in your about page, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember it exactly. It's, maybe you can remind me about it, people, you want people to know they care about you.
Oh, yes, I remember. I think it's actually a Maya Angelou quote.
Okay.
Where she says, people won't show you how much they care until you show them how much you care.
Bingo. Exactly.
That is the reality.
Yep. And that's what encompasses this entire thing about, you know, if something happens, doesn't matter who's to blame. Show them that you care and that you're willing to go that extra mile to make amends and fix the situation.
Yeah, because that's what they're going to remember. When you think about it, when you ask people questions about how do you feel about this company or how do you feel about that person,
right?
You're not thinking about whatever marketing that they put out there. You're thinking about how were my experiences with that company? How were my experiences with that person? And that's what your feedback to whoever is asking you the question is going to be based on.
Right.
So, I mean, the emotions are the foundation of this entire, customer experience journey. And if as a business owner, you don't understand that and you're just focused on the money, or you're just focused on, you know, getting the product out there, and you're not focused on, you know, the experience of it, you're going, over time, you're definitely going to start losing money.
Yes. Yes. I want to kind of not flip, but go into referrals, because I know several VAs, virtual assistants, and business owners that they're new, and they're just like, oh my God, when am I going to be referred by a client? And so it's kind of it's not going to happen overnight. That's the first thing. But how can someone ensure that, you know, that they're laying that groundwork to get good quality referrals from their clients?
Well, I think that you need to definitely be true when you have interactions with people. And there's nothing wrong with asking for referrals. But I found with my business, for example, I would say maybe 40 to 50% of the customers that I've gotten are based on a participant came, they had a great experience in the workshop. They may have a colleague that works at a different company, and they said, you know, oh my gosh, where did you find that pin, that smiley face pin? And you're like, oh, well, my company hired this lady and she was just so awesome. She came in and she trained us and we had so much fun. It was unlike any other customer service workshop I've been to. I feel like I was at a party, but we learned so much, you know, and I mean, even if I paid for a 30-second advertisement on the radio or on the television, I still cannot replicate what she said to her colleague in that experience. And again, it's based on what kind of experience I provided for them. Did they feel like they got value out of it? And so would they want to now refer you to someone else?
Right.
So those are the two strategies you need to employ. You need to focus on the experience that you're providing for your clients, that they would actually want to refer you. And secondly, don't be afraid to ask for referrals. So and insurance agents do it all the time. When they sell you a life insurance policy, they say to you, could you give me 5 names of 5 people that you know that would be interested in this type of policy?
Right.
And they ask you for that person's name and their number. And of course, they go up and call them. So those are the two approaches that you can actively use. And of course, the former, which is the client referring you on their own without being you prodding them and asking for a referral, is clearly the better one, because in that way, they're actually walking advertisements for your business, because they're sharing with you, boy, I was really wowed by this individual. She called and checked up on me. I remember my daughter was sick one day and I had a deadline to meet, and she was able to say, it's okay, I will cover this for you. Don't worry about it. Spend as much time with your child as you need and ensure she gets better and whatever. So all of those things leave an indelible mark on people's emotions and in their mind. Are you that type of individual? And if you are, I guarantee that people will start speaking on your behalf.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. You mentioned about asking for referrals. What about feedback or testimonials or even reviews? What's your thoughts on that?
Of course, definitely.
Yeah.
So, at the end of every workshop, we always give the participants an evaluation form, and they give feedback in terms of how they feel about the workshop. We ask, if you could have done anything differently, what would they recommend? Would they want less of this activity and more of that activity? So I would encourage you as a solopreneur to do that as well. At the end of your job or project with the client, you can do a free, there are lots of free survey tools out there, Survey Monkey, just to name one of them, and you can send out, try not to make it more than about 5 questions, because people get deterred when the questioning is too long. So very simple and to the point, how they felt about the experience. Would they refer you to someone else? Is there anything that could have been improved? Because again, sometimes if a lot of times I find customers sometimes will not share with you something that may need to be improved unless they have a really bad experience, because I find people tend not to want to write like a letter to a company to state their recommendations. And that's why I think like suggestion boxes and those things tend to have a low feedback count in a business, because you go in there to conduct business, you're in a rush. Unless you had a really bad experience, that's the only way you're going to go out of your way to go fill out the form and the suggestion box and that kind of thing. So from that perspective, I do believe that it is critical for you to make an effort to encourage the employees to ask the customers to give feedback.
Right.
And so testimonials are very important, social proof, especially in the online space, because a lot of persons are going to do research on an individual or what they have to offer before they actually engage them for business. And they're going to look at what other people are saying. And so the more of what other people say is kind of what leads them in a direction of, okay, I think I'm definitely going to engage this individual, sign up for her 30-minute breakthrough session, because I really like what I'm hearing, what people are saying, and whatever the persons are saying, it connects with what they are feeling in terms of the pain. So they believe that this person can really make them feel better and feel that need.
Yeah. I love this. We could just keep talking and talking.
Yes.
Unfortunately, though, we have to wrap this up in a few moments. So I want to turn this over to you and ask you, what final words of advice would you like to leave the listeners with today as it relates to customer experience and their business?
So my final words would be, as a business owner, as a solopreneur, as an entrepreneur, really look at your business. Identify how you want your customers to feel. Ensure that you're a customer of your business at least once per month to ensure that there is consistency in the deliverance of the kind of service experience that you are anticipating. Ask people for feedback. If feedback comes back that you don't agree with, do not get defensive. Be open to constructive criticism, because it's with these opportunities of criticism that we're able to grow and develop. And sometimes the truth is staring us right in the face, and we don't want to face the facts that there is opportunity for growth. But if you open your mind and you don't look on it as a negative and more as a positive, you will definitely be able to move up and improve in your life. So that would be my, my final recommendation for all the persons that are listening to this podcast. Every day that you wake up, you get an opportunity to be a better version of yourself. And the only way to do that is to constantly look for opportunities to grow and to develop yourself, because everything starts with you.
Absolutely. I'm inspired by you.
I'm glad. I am glad I'm inspiring you. I hope I'm also inspiring those persons that are listening as well. But, as I said, I'm very passionate about customer experience. I've been in it for about 8 or 9 years. And I mean, I've gotten a lot of persons saying to me, Yanique, you really need to take this message globally, and my challenge is just getting people to understand how important it is, because I think it's just so wonderful when you can go somewhere and have a great experience. Like, to me, that's a win-win situation for both parties. I leave feeling great and you leave feeling even more great, because guess what? I'm going to continue spending my money with you, and I'm going to tell a whole bunch of other people about you.
Absolutely. Well, where can people go to find you so they can connect with you, learn more about what you're doing in your business, find your podcast, all of that good stuff?
Oh, wow. So my podcast is called Navigating the Customer Experience, and it's available on iTunes and on Stitcher Radio. And you can also access it on my website, which is yaniquegrant.com. And my website has all of the information in terms of what we offer and the services that we provide. And of course, I'm available on all social media platforms. On Facebook, I'm Yanique Grant. On Instagram, I'm Yanique W.A. Grant. On LinkedIn, I am also Yanique Grant. And Twitter, I'm Yanique W.A. Grant. So, and of course, the podcast has a Twitter feed as well. It's called Navigating CX. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. I would be more than happy to speak with you on a casual level for inspiration or anything that you need advice on. As long as at the end of the day, both, you get value out of the experience, I'm more than open to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. I've had a lovely conversation and time speaking with you, so I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Yanique, for joining me and talking about the customer experience. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. You can learn more about Yanique and find the episode show notes for this episode on dvpodcasts.com/inspired, and just search for episode 22's show notes. Well, that does it for this episode. Before I sign out, I wanted to remind you that I would love to connect with you. I'd love to hear your feedback, your questions, your topic suggestions. You can connect with me on Facebook at facebook.com/DarleneVictoriaWork or on Twitter at DarleneVictoria. Until next time, remember to stop dreaming and start doing. Be inspired by the most important person in your life, you. Take care for now. This is Darlene Victoria signing out.